Is there really justice in the world? Why do the truly good people suffer so much? Why is it that the wicked often live in comfort and seem to enjoy great wealth? Is kindness ultimately just a cruel joke played on us? In ancient India, in the vast kingdom of Magadha, on a turbulent stormy evening, a weary and exhausted woman humbly knelt before the wise Buddha. Tears fell into the dry dust as her voice trembled with deep sorrow, lingering confusion, and a subtle hint of resentment. Master, she held back tears, hands clasped tightly. Tears blurred her vision. I have always believed that good is rewarded and evil punished. But why do I continue to suffer despite my constant efforts to do good? Why do those who commit evil acts still roam freely and enjoy their riches? There was a subtle hint of defiance in his eyes, yet more prominently, a profound sense of helplessness before the relentless grip of fate. He looked at the Buddha, as if hoping for an answer, one that could unlock the heavy shackles within him. The Buddha looked at him with deep compassion in his eyes. Like the calmest lake under the night sky, reflecting the confusion and struggles of all beings. He did not rush to answer, simply closing his eyes gently, as if in thought. The sandalwood incense burned in the shop, rising in wisps, and the surroundings fell into silence, with only Pali's hurried breathing echoing faintly in the corridor. The Buddha slowly opened his eyes and said gently, Pali, how can a person with a kind heart be shaken? These words landed like a heavy stone thrown into a calm lake. They stirred layers of waves within him. His eyes flashed with struggle, his throat choked, wanting to retort but left speechless. The Buddha did not urge him. He simply watched him quietly, as if waiting for him to find the answer himself. The wind rustled the treetops, and falling leaves mirrored the interplay of good and evil in the world, slowly intertwining. Pali held a strong belief from a young age that sincere good deeds would be reciprocated with warmth and kindness. Thus, the tea house he ran in the city was not only a place for merchants to rest but also a refuge for many impoverished souls. He never turned away travelers without a penny. He always greeted them with a warm smile and handed them a steaming bowl of hot tea, even allowing them to rest in the cozy shop until they could repay him. Goodwill in the world does not disappear. He once smiled at a ragged old man and said, he was just waiting to be passed on. But he never expected that his kindness would become the knife that destroyed him. He was a down-and-out merchant named Raha, who often claimed to have once been quite wealthy and successful in business. But due to a sudden misfortune, he lost all his wealth. Pali, feeling pity, let him help out in the tea house and provided him with meals, never asking when he would repay. Nor did he care if he was truly homeless. However, disaster struck unexpectedly. One bright morning, as he opened the tea house door just like he did every day, he discovered the place packed with eager people. In utter shock and disbelief, he suddenly realized that the counter was in complete disarray. All the money from the shop had mysteriously vanished, and even more terrifyingly, Raha was among the crowd, angrily shouting at him and accusing him to the officials for the chaos. He's a fraud who stole my savings. He pretended to do good, but secretly plundered others' belongings. Pali's mind buzzed, and he could barely stand. He stared in disbelief at the person he had once helped, a deep, indescribable pain surging within him. Raha, I helped you. Why do you repay kindness with malice? His voice trembled, filled with disbelief. But the other merely smiled coldly, with no trace of guilt, only unmasked greed and malice in his eyes. Ultimately, amidst the crowd's chatter and the official's expulsion, he was labeled a thief, the tea house was shut down, all assets were confiscated, and he fell from being a warm-hearted benefactor to a beggar on the street. What chilled him even more was seeing those he had once helped so selflessly now looking on with cold indifference, even deliberately avoiding his gaze as he walked past them in silence. Kindness. Was it really wrong? He wandered the streets, the night wind sharp as a knife, making him shiver. Meanwhile, on the other side, the wealthy merchant's mansion was brightly lit. With cups clinking, the merchant's son, Shalu, was the most notorious person in the city. He indulged in pleasure, oppressed the common people, and had even whipped unarmed beggars in the street. Yet no one dared to intervene. He relied on his family's amassed wealth, reveling in luxury every night, and those who suffered under him could only sigh quietly. There was no other way. Perry stood at the street corner, gazing at the brightly lit mansion, his eyes lost and filled with resentment. He was confused as to why his kindness led to betrayal and suffering, while those who trampled on the rights of others and committed various acts of evil could enjoy a seemingly peaceful and pleasurable life. At this very moment, the night was heavy, as if the entire world mocked his youthful naivety. Is there really cause and effect in this world? He muttered to himself, fists clenched, a surge of unprecedented anger and confusion igniting within him. He needed an answer that could explain all this injustice. So, filled with confusion and resentment, he journeyed to the monastery where the Buddha was, hoping to find the truth of good and evil under the light of the Buddha's wisdom. The Buddha gazed quietly at Pali, his eyes deep like the Ganges, as if he could see through the turmoil in his heart. The hall was infused with sandalwood fragrance, and a gentle breeze moved past the prayer flags, creating a solemn silence. Pali, can you tell me what the most unshakable law in this world truly is? The Buddha asked softly. His gentle voice held a strong, undeniable power. Pali bowed his head, eyes filled with confusion. I once thought it was justice, but now I'm not so sure. The Buddha smiled slightly. Not in a hurry to answer, he gently raised his hand, pointing to an ancient tree in the courtyard. Look at this tree. How is it so lush and full of leaves? Pali followed his gaze. That is a tall Bodhi tree, with lush branches and leaves, casting a large shade. He pondered for a moment and replied, because its roots run deep and it has aged. The Buddha nodded. He continued to ask with curiosity, if you plant a seed today, when will it eventually grow to look like this? Pali was stunned. He thought for a moment and softly said, it may take many years. The Buddha slightly nodded. He gently said that the results of good and evil are much like the gradual growth of trees. Some seeds sprout and begin to flourish the very next day after being carefully sown into the soil. Some take longer to bear fruit. Pali frowned, seeming to understand, yet still filled with doubt. But Master, I must ask, why do I strive to do good in this life yet still face suffering? Why can those who do evil still enjoy wealth and honor? The Buddha looked at him, with deep compassion in his eyes. Pali, have you ever had the chance to see the millet beautifully sown in spring? It is carefully harvested in the autumn season, while the fast-growing weeds can thrive wildly in just a few days. Pali nodded, and the Buddha continued, the cause and effect of good and evil are also like this. Some enjoy the blessings of this life due to their good deeds in past lives. Some suffer hardships because the bad causes they planted in the past are ripening. But if one continues to do good, blessings are always present. A glimmer of light flashed in Pali's eyes, but he still had doubts. But I often observe those who engage in wrongdoing still living quite comfortably. When will their bad consequences show? The Buddha's gaze became profound, as if he saw a deeper truth through his confusion. Pali, if someone inherits an orchard left by their ancestors, with abundant fruits before him, if he squanders it and does not cultivate, do you know what fate awaits him? Pali realized something important. If he stops cultivating, when the fruit trees wither, he will end up with nothing. The Buddha smiled and said, exactly. Evildoers currently indulge in pleasure based on their past good karma. Now they only know how to take, not to support good causes. When past merits are depleted, negative outcomes will follow. Pali became quiet as the confusion in his heart slowly cleared. As if the dust-covered window was pierced by sunlight, in that moment, his gaze finally became clear. The Buddha sighed gently, for cause and effect are inseparable. Retribution will come, but not yet. Bodhisattvas fear the cause, beings fear the effect. Wise individuals grasp causes, not effects. The wind outside the hall rustled the leaves, creating a gentle sound. Time flows invisibly, revealing the cycle of cause and effect. Time flows quietly like the waters of the Ganges, and the affairs of the world are like tides, rising and falling. It never stops for anyone. Though Pali lost the tea house and experienced confusion and pain, he did not forget the Buddha's teachings. True good deeds should remain steadfast, regardless of immediate gains or losses. So he made the decision not to complain about his fate, but instead set up a humble tea stall in a quiet, inconspicuous alley in the bustling city, enduring wind and rain, day after day. She still treated others warmly, and each cup of tea still carried that genuine kindness. At first, business was slow, and others thought she was just a fallen woman. However, gradually over time, more and more people began to notice the delightful sweetness of her tea and genuinely feel her selfless kindness. "This girl's delightful tea always warms the heart so gently," an old man remarked. Not only that, he treated everyone differently and fairly, never favoring the wealthy over the less fortunate. His name spread once more in the city, not merely as a tea-house owner, yet as a consistently kind-hearted wanderer. Gradually, even the court officials were drawn to his tea art, and even royal nobles came to invite him to the palace to brew tea. His many good deeds unknowingly transformed into new opportunities. However, on the other side of fate, those who had once done evil were facing their retribution. The fallen merchant Rahal, who had once framed him, did not stop after deceiving Polly's tea house. He continued to exploit and deceive others, and soon he was exposed, reviled, expelled by the authorities, and left to wander the streets. Those individuals who had been deceived by him chose to avoid him. In the end, he found himself alone in a foreign land, with no one willing to help him. And that wicked rich merchant's son, Cheryl, still indulged in debauchery and pleasure, squandering recklessly. He believed that wealth was limitless, and that his immense power could safeguard him for a lifetime. But he never expected that his father would be accused by the court due to a sudden change. All his family fortune was lost, and former servants left one after another. Those who once flocked to him now avoided him. One day, he knelt helplessly at the tavern entrance. He begged for food but was harshly turned away by the owner. A beggar he had once insulted looked at him coldly and said softly, "Do you still remember? How did you treat the beggars on the street during that time? What are you now?" He was utterly stunned, trembling all over his body, finally realizing that he had squandered not just his wealth, but also blessings. And what about Polly? His tea stall had become the most respected place in the city. His good deeds not only brought him a new life but also allowed him to help many in need. On this day, Polly walked into the Buddha's monastery again. Kneeling before the Buddha, his eyes were no longer confused, only filled with clear light. "Master, I finally understand that the consequences of good and evil are not as they seem. True wisdom is not confused by temporary gains and losses, but believes in cause and effect, and continues forward with a righteous heart." The Buddha smiled gently and gave a small, thoughtful nod. "Cause and effect are clear. We invite both blessings and misfortunes. Those who harbor good thoughts will ultimately reap good rewards. Evildoers may appear successful, but they will ultimately face the consequences." Outside the hall, the warm sunlight fell gently, illuminating his serene face and reflecting his tranquil and steadfast heart. On this day, morning light filtered through the branches outside the Buddha's dwelling. A gentle breeze brought a sense of peaceful tranquility. Polly knelt before the Buddha, hands clasped, eyes clear. He had once lamented the unfairness of fate here. He had also been confused about the cause and effect of good and evil, but now his heart was as calm as a lake, no longer trapped by anger and confusion. "Got it, Master. I understand now," he said softly, with a newfound firmness in his tone. "All things in the world result from specific conditions and causes. Good deeds may not immediately bring rewards, and bad deeds may not instantly lead to misfortune, but cause and effect are always present, never disappearing." The Buddha nodded slowly. He smiled and asked, "Are you still willing to do good?" Polly answered without hesitation, "Yes." The Buddha looked at him quietly, his gaze compassionate and profound. Sentient beings fear outcomes. Bodhisattvas fear origins. The wise do good not out of desire, but because they understand that good intentions are the most precious rewards. Polly was slightly taken aback. Then a relieved smile slowly appeared on his lips. He finally understood that genuine kindness is not about expecting anything in return, but rather a heartfelt choice made from deep within. He no longer cared about the sufferings of the past, nor did he resent those who had harmed him, for he knew that everyone must ultimately face the consequences of their actions, and he only needed to walk steadfastly on his own path. He clasped his hands and bowed deeply to the Buddha, feeling grateful. "Master, thank you for your guidance. Now, no matter how fate changes, I won't get lost anymore." The Buddha smiled silently, slowly raising his hand to point at the ancient Bodhi tree outside the hall. The wind blew, and the leaves rustled. Sunlight filtered through the branches, casting warmth. That tree still stood there, deeply rooted, unshaken by wind and rain, nor withered by time. Polly happily left the monastery, walking with a light step. His tea stall remained, kindness remained, and the future remained. Meanwhile, the son of the wealthy merchant, who had once committed many wrongs, faced greater disasters due to his misdeeds, sentenced to exile, losing his former glory. The down-and-out merchant who had deceived him was also filled with regret and helplessness and loneliness. But no one could save him anymore. The cycle of cause and effect has never been absent. After that challenging period, Polly's tea house flourished again. People came not just for his tea's aroma, but for his stories. He shared his experiences with everyone confused about good and evil, showing that kindness is never wasted. He simply gave back to the world in another way. Someone asked him, "You were deceived and deeply hurt. Do you truly no longer harbor any feelings of resentment?" He just smiled. Looking into the distance, he softly said, "Hatred is a poison planted in the heart that only brings suffering, while kindness is the best relief." Sunlight fell in front of his tea house. The sign now reads, "Cause and effect are never lost." In the distance, the wind blew through the Bodhi tree, its leaves trembling, as if echoing through the universe.